If you're planning on building a PC and you want to keep things quiet, these are some tips that I want to share with you based on my experience and my research. I built a Hackintosh a few years ago. During that process, I made some decisions and I learned some lessons. That's why I wanted to make this video, so somebody on my position, like a few years ago, can build a powerful machine, but it's not like a super noisy thing. Right now, my PC is on. Here you have the microphone and it's underneath the table below the microphone. Yeah, I think it's very quiet. With the other build, I could hear the fan spinning. My first tip would be buy a big case. So my previous build was already a big case, but now I built an even bigger one. The reason is that the case was getting hot very quickly. And with my new case, the overall temperature stays down because the air has more space to flow. It makes kind of sense that a bigger case will keep the temperature down, and that means that the fans have to spin less, and that means less noise. I also found that this extra space at the top of the motherboard made cable management easier. And because I don't need CD-ROMs or any units like that, there's more space and more air to flow, and you can put another fan there if you want. My other tip is to buy an overpowered power supply. And the reason for that is that some of these power supplies come with fans, but they don't spin on lower usage. So if you know all the components that you have and you still don't have the power supply, check out this calculator where you can put all the components that you have and it will tell you which power supply you can buy. If you can, spend a little bit more. If you can buy just a little bit more power, usually you have brands that come with the model, and then that model has different watts. You can buy that model with more watts. Don't go cheap on the power supply because it's very important. It seems like a stupid thing, but it's not. And another tip is to buy a big CPU cooler. I think the case and the CPU cooler are the most important things to make a case silent. In my previous build, I had liquid CPU cooler, which I thought it would be better. But what I found is that you could hear the water pump. The water pump wasn't that noisy, but the fans would spin more and would make more noise. And I also think it's because the fans were very small. Maybe with other CPU liquid coolers would have been better, but my experience wasn't that good. And this time I went for something else. This time I went for a heatsink, and I bought the most recommended one. It's a Noctua. This brand is very known. When you see it, it's like, this is huge. I don't know if it's going to fit in the case, but that's why you buy a bigger one. The fans are very huge, so that means that they don't have to spin that much to create flow. And because the whole thing is huge, also dissipates a lot of heat, so it doesn't have to spin that much. And according to the manufacturer, the CPU cooler that I was using before has a noise of 31.4 dBA. It doesn't specify if this is the maximum noise, but I'm going to assume that that is, because my new fan has a maximum level of 24.6 dBA. I know it doesn't sound like that, but in the decibels scale, that's double the noise. I know it's tricky when you see these numbers, but that's how it works. Doing some research on CPU coolers, liquid versus just fans, I found that liquid coolers have a tendency to have a shorter lifespan. Sometimes after 4 years or something like that, they require renewal. Sometimes they fail even before than that. It's true though that I found better liquid coolers. If you want to go for liquid coolers, check for the ones that have bigger fans. Check that the fans have a way to stop spinning if it's not too hot. So far I told you about an overpowered PSU, a big case, a big CPU cooler. What about the GPU? It's a surprise, but same story. My biggest mistake with the old build was that I bought this small NVIDIA 1070. It was a very good graphics card at the time, but it was too small to dissipate the heat. And it only had one fan, and that meant that that fan had to spin all day. It's also a very small fan, which means that the noise that it was doing, it was very high pitch. I was using my old machine for Hackintosh, and at some point Apple decided to get rid of NVIDIA. So I moved to an AMD card. I went for a bigger one with 3 fans because I learned my lesson. I understood that that was spinning like crazy all day. and it was hot anyway. I went for a bigger one, and most of the time the fans didn't have to spin because it has a lot of real estate to dissipate the heat. So with the GPU, with the graphics card, yeah, same thing. In my case, I need a good graphics card because I also edit videos like this. Subscribe and leave a like if you like this. And that's why I need a bigger GPU, but I don't want to make that trade-off of having, when I'm making music, I don't want any noise. So that's why I picked the graphics card, thinking that the fans won't spin, or if they spin, they are going to be very, very low because I'm not using the graphics card at that moment when I'm recording or like right now. I'll put the link in the description with my build, all the components and all that stuff, and also the previous build so you can compare. But the one last tip that I think it's important is to avoid hard disks. In my new build, I bought these small SSDs. They are called NVMe, which are super fast. They take very little space and they don't make any noise. And I have a hard disk as well because this kind of storage is super expensive. So I bought a hard disk to store things that I'm not using. So usually my SSDs and these NVMe cards have the projects that I'm working right now. And also, very important, my operating system, the Windows partition goes into one of these. You should never put Windows in a hard disk because it's not going to run fast. Usually you hear some kind of whirling. It's not that big of a deal, but if you're going for super quiet, avoid hard disks. Here at home, what I have is a setup where everything that I do in my computer, I have some software that backs up everything to another computer I have away from here, from the studio. It's a Mac Mini, but it could be whatever. That computer has hard disks, but it's in a place where I don't care about the noise. Then that computer backs up everything to the cloud. I have a lot of experience with computers. I've been working for more than 15 years as a software engineer. I've been always around with computers, and I know that hard disks and any storage you have, it's going to fail at some point. So you should always back up everything. I would recommend also backing it up to the cloud because if something happens here, there can be a lot of things that can break your computer at home and then you lost everything. Yeah, so bigger is better. That's the conclusion. If you want to keep things quiet, a big case with a big heatsink will keep the noise down. And if you buy a case that also has been thought of to keep things quiet, then go for it. It's more expensive, but in my experience, it was worth it. Let me know if you have any questions about the Hackintosh I built. I use it for making music in Windows, so it's a Hackintosh/PC build. So let me know if you want to know more about the specs. I'll leave a link in the description with all the components that I bought. I built a Hackintosh before my first Hackintosh build, and I made a video about it, and that's why I started this channel. This is kind of an update of the lessons I learned after I built that build 3 years ago, why I now made a different approach. So if you want to build a new PC and you also care about keeping the noise down, I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.